So happy to be here today with Ashley Stelling. Ashley is like a mentor and a friend. So thank you, Ashley, for being here. Excited to have the chat today.
Thanks for having me.
My first question for you, Ashley, is what Enneagram type are you, and how would you describe it in your own words?
I am a type 2. So I am a people person to my core. My desire is to um, serve and love and know people at like a more in-depth, intimate level than just yeah, the little myriad of friendships that we tend to see nowadays. That's
Thanks
my
for
quick
sharing.
summary, I think.
I love it. Well, maybe to expand on that, like how did you first discover the Enneagram and then figuring out you were type two, and just what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, let's see. I've been working through the Enneagram for at least 10 years. So I started in 2014. Yeah, so right about 10 years ago. And we did it in my discipleship group that I was a part of and talked through personalities. And the thing that caught me about the Enneagram was that it helps you understand who you are based on how you function internally. So it's not something that other people can pin on you. It's not how you present yourself, but it's literally what drives you to want to do the things that you do and to be the person that you are for good and bad. And so in my early 20s, I had a lot of different situations that came up that I couldn't figure out why either I responded the way that I did or that I internalized and personalized things the way that I did. And when I first started, really understood Enneagram as this idea of like, oh, this is something that actually defines me in a way that I've never been able to put words to in the past. And so when I was in a bad mood or when I was felt like I had been wronged, that piece, that eight, that really unhealthy eight that the two goes to would come out, and I would become manipulative. Or if I felt like I wasn't being loved in the way that I wanted to be loved, I would do things to serve people with the anticipation, expectation that I, that they would do it back for me as opposed to genuinely doing it because I love to serve people. And so that was, for me, one of the biggest pieces that helped me understand a little bit more about my character and why I do the things that I do. And now the beauty of it, I have developed myself into a much healthier version of my two. And so when people wrong my friends, like that eight becomes really handy. Um, and I get to formulate that as a caregiver and as somebody who's genuinely is loving my people for the sake of loving my people, not to get something in return.
That's really powerful. Could you speak a little bit more to that growth for the two? So moving to the forward when you kind of see that in
Mhm.
yourself, how that shows up.
Yeah, so one of the things that I love is seeing how my Enneagram number correlates to my spiritual gifts. And one of my spiritual gifts is empathy. And so the way that I care about people. So when people ask me what I'm passionate about or like what career choice, like I am passionate about people. And a lot of that stems out of that desire to sit in and serve and love people. And so as I sit with them and I'm in a healthy space, I can move to that four and I can really sit in empathy with them and I can understand the emotions to a deeper level as opposed to as a kid when I couldn't understand or couldn't control my emotions. They came out as very neurotic and almost out of control. And now I have this really, really sweet piece of control that I can sit in where I can process my emotions and I know what I'm feeling and how to communicate about what I'm feeling because of that growth in the four. The four, for those who maybe don't know, is the individualist, and so they do feel that on a very deep level of that individual self identity that they are not like other people, and so it helps me a little bit to resonate with them in that way, because there's always some disconnect when you are trying to talk to somebody who maybe is in a situation that you personally have never been in, but when you can empathize with them, it changes things. That being said, that eight is where you go into dysfunction. So when you're stressed, when you're in an unhealthy place, and so as I've grown in my development of the Enneagram, I've learned how to channel that for really good things as opposed to otherwise. Because as a two, I used to get steamrolled a lot by really strong eights, and now I can kind of match them on their level and say, no, this is why I think the way that I do. And so not only stand up for myself but stand up for my people as well, which took a lot of practice.
I love that. And so kind of moving forward with that same idea, when you think about how you're bringing the Enneagram into your daily life or when it comes up for you, what does that look like?
It helps me stop and assess why I'm doing the thing that I'm doing. So if I find myself in a headspace that is overpopulated, or I'm trying to do way too many things at once, it will help me stop and assess what my priorities are. Or am I trying to prioritize things that don't fall into my strengths? So I am a weird mix of the two wing one. And so I have this very black and white logistical personality that wants to see things done, or I have this very people oriented personality. I really struggle to put the two together. And so when I get to a place where I'm overwhelmed, it helps me stop to say, like, okay, am I trying to work out of my one wing when actually I really need to be focused on my two right now? Or am I just putting so much emphasis on my two and I really need to tap into that one wing because I need to get stuff done? And I'm in much more of a progressive, like accomplished mode, but actually I really need to slow down and just be with the person that I'm sitting with. I no longer need to be a fixer. I just need to be a listener. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a really cool distinction. I'm hearing you mention a little bit about being able to like tune into that part of yourself, being able to be aware of the why behind your actions. Is there anything that helps you kind of, going through your daily life to stop and reflect on that or to just maybe be a little bit more aware in the moment?
For me, it's prayer. If I get to a place where my head's where I'm just spinning and I feel like I'm overwhelmed and trying to do too much, it's stopping and saying, okay, Lord, like, what have you put in my path that I need to acknowledge versus what am I trying to do alone? And so I think as a two, it's really easy when I get overwhelmed to fall in a little bit more into that manipulative, unhealthy dysfunction of being either very codependent on my people, so wanting to spend way more time with people than my body necessarily needs, or figuring out this healthy balance of is this is an okay place to stop and reflect and like ask God to center me and then just keep going with it, because we don't always have easy days. Sometimes we're asked to do really hard things, and so just having that piece to stop me, to allow myself to pray and then remember my why.
Thanks for sharing that. Um, what is something people often get wrong or don't understand about you?
Ooh, that's a great question. Um, it's changed over the years. So the stereotypical answer would be that I'm this people pleaser that needs to um, do all of these things solely for the sake of being loved, solely for the purpose of like, look at me and look how good I am, this pride, like this intention to one up people. And there are pieces of that that are true. So I like at an unhealthy place, I am very much a people pleaser and I care what people think. But or and in function and in health, and the more that I've learned about myself, the more that I can say, you know what, their opinion about me doesn't have to matter. And so I think people always assume that my actions are very self-motivated, and that's not the case. For me, that is, I actually really struggle when people just assume that I'm doing something for the benefit of myself, because it's quite the opposite. Like, I do the job that I do because I love my people fiercely. I protect my husband and my friends because I love them fiercely, not because I want to see what I'm going to gain back from them or how I can benefit from this job or that job or loving somebody in this specific way. Like, I hate being pinned into this corner of like, well, you're just doing it so that, or, you know, you shared that story because you want to one up and make your story look better. No, sometimes it's just because I genuinely think that hearing that somebody else is in that situation is going to be equally as helpful as maybe knowing that you're not alone. So that's my biggest pet peeve.
I'm hearing a lot of the root of the type 2, the empathy, right? That I'm truly doing this because I care. There's nothing else there. And I think that is so much of the beauty in the authenticity of being a type 2. I appreciate you
Mhm.
bringing that in.
Yeah.
So
But
if we,
it's also
no, go ahead.
learning that it's not, it's also been learning, or for that, like with the root of it, that it's not my opinion isn't always necessary. Because like in that deep root of care, sometimes you're like, well, then they need to know this and they need to know this and they need to know this. And that has been a lot of work that I've had to do to actually like, no, they can either make that mistake on their own or they can ask if they want your opinion, but you don't have to share it with them all the time.
I appreciate that. And
Yeah.
therapies too.
Yeah.
So if we were to see the world through your eyes, Ashley, what would we see?
I live a life with rose-colored glasses. I'm a natural optimist. I don't know, I don't see situations very often as antagonistic. I always look at them as opportunities. And so whether it's serving people, encouraging people, um, I don't know, somebody cuts me off in traffic. I'm like, oh, they must have to go to the bathroom really bad. Or they're really late for picking up their kid for something. Drives my husband absolutely nuts, I think. But um, yeah, my desire is so much more optimistic that we just need to have a little bit more empathy for the people that are around us because we unfortunately live in a pretty selfish world. So figuring out how I can just be bring a little bit more kindness and compassion to all of the situations that I encounter.
Yeah, that idea of a selfish world is very counterintuitive to the two, right? But I think it's interesting because I think in growth for two, it's learning to hold that space of I can take care of my own needs too. What does that look like for you to live in that tension in between I'm selfish versus I'm prioritizing my own needs?
So this is something that I've worked on a lot more recently because I work in a job that is very demanding of my time. And so for me, it's not feeling guilty if something doesn't get done. It's one of my favorite things about Jesus is that he's always okay with being interrupted. And so it's never this inconvenience when somebody stops him or asks him a question or needs his help. And he prioritizes alone time with the Father. And so he starts his day in prayer in solitude. And so that is something that I've mimicked where my day might not start at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. It might start at 8, 9, 10, 11, depending on what my work days look like. But it's not feeling guilty when I just take that time to sit and be by myself. Morning is when I'm introverted. So it's where I want to sit with my Bible. I want to sit with the Lord and just really reflect on what my thoughts have been, where my day is going to be. And sometimes if it goes an hour or an hour and a half, I don't feel guilty about it because it's okay.
Thanks. Last question for you, Ashley. Any just final thoughts or words of wisdom for folks who are listening who maybe are a type 2, think they might be a type 2, or just are interacting with type 2s?
If you're interacting with type 2s, have a lot of patience, that we're really hard on ourselves if we feel like we messed something up or if we hurt you in any way. So if you're interacting with a type 2, that's my first big thing is like be patient. If you think you're a type 2, figure out why. What is your internal motivator? Is it to be wanted? Is it to be loved? Is it to be known? Or is it to not rock the boat? I think there's some misguidance between type 2s, type 9s, and type 6s, which is interesting because they're all three in different, like the pieces of the triad. But there is a difference between trying to people please and plan and worst case scenario, which I have a tendency to do, but it doesn't drive what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. In the same way, I am very much a peacekeeper. I hate rocking the boat. I hate conflict, but my internal motivator is still to be loved and desired and wanted. And so if you're struggling to feel loved, desired, wanted, and you know that like that is your core, then I would press into that and figure out why and where are you looking for that love? Where are you looking for that fulfillment? Because if you're looking for it from people, you're not going to find it. And you're not going to find it to a level that you need to genuinely like still you. Versus if you think that you're a type 2, I would just sit and assess what makes you think that. What characteristics do you show when you're stressed, when you feel like you're in an unhealthy place, and what about when you're in a positive place? Read about the Enneagram. That's my biggest biggest recommendation. Don't just take the assessment. The assessment's not going to get you very far. Genuinely read about each number and figure out, like, it's a great place to start to take an assessment and to have, 2, 3 numbers to go off of. But read, because that is going to help you understand a lot more. Like when I read the 2, I was like, oh, that is me to my core. When I read the 9, I was like, yeah, I have bits of that, but that's not what drives me to be who I am. So read about it. That's how you will learn. Ask questions.
Oh, thanks, Ashley. I think you're touching on so many good points. And obviously, I know you've studied the Enneagram a lot. So, getting at that idea that, yes, we might have little bits and pieces of all the types that resonate with us, but it's really
Mhm.
feeling seen in that core motivation, core fear, above anything else related to the type. That's a very helpful distinction. I think a lot of people are not always super clear on that. So, thank you for bringing
Yeah.
that to light and sharing.
Yeah. My
Well,
pleasure.
thank you for being here. This is so nice to chat
Of
with
course.
you and just hear a little bit more about what it's like living as a type 2.
Yeah.
So thanks.
Thanks for asking.